Good afternoon and welcome to today's live broadcast from the studios of PianoForte Chicago, 1335 South Michigan Avenue in Chicago. I'm Leslie Keros, your host here on 90.9 FM WDCB, as well as CAN TV 27. During a typical year, we celebrate the arrival of the annual Chicago Blues Festival with a Piano Blues Showcase in early June. This, of course, is not a typical year, so we're presenting our annual Blues Piano Showcase today on one of the last days of August. And we have an immensely talented pianist for you to enjoy, Johnny Iguana. A Philadelphia native, he plays a variety of styles, but it was his blues that brought him to Chicago years ago when he was a member of Junior Wells' touring band. And now Delmark Records has released Johnny's first blues CD as a leader, with guest stars such as Billy Boy Arnold, Little Ed, and John Primer. But for this hour, he's totally solo. We'll get to the music in just a moment, but first, I'd like to welcome those of you not only listening on WDCB radio, but also watching on cable TV in Chicago, on CAN TV's Channel 27. I'd also like to thank our friends here at PianoForte Chicago, serving Chicagoland and helping people love the piano for more than 15 years. Information at PianoForteChicago.com. If it sounds extra quiet during the broadcast today, it's because there is no studio audience for this event. It's just you and Johnny Iguana and me, of course. So welcome again to our live broadcast. Johnny Iguana, welcome to the airwaves of WDCB.
That was Dance Scandal at the Gymnasium, the title track of the Claudettes album of the same name. And this is also an original composition called Big Easy Women. Not only was it on an early Claudettes album, but it is one of the featured tracks on the new Johnny Iguana Chicago Spectacular. The recorded version features Bill Dickens on bass, Mike McCaskey on drums, but I'm going to try to summon their spirits right now and do it myself. Big Easy Women. All right, I'm gonna slow it down. Sort of. That was called She's So Imaginary. That was an instrumental tune that was turned into a vocal tune, and now I'm bringing it back to its roots. But I'm going to play a song called Motorhome here, which I titled it in the spirit of Raymond Scott's Powerhouse, and I was really pretty pleased that I tagged the Raymond Scott archives when I posted this song at one point, and they responded to me, thanks for keeping Raymond Scott's spirit alive, and they emailed me PDFs of the piano sheet music for Powerhouse. So this is kind of my own sort of cartoon music, even though he didn't write it for cartoons, they just took it. But feel free to do the same if you're an animator. It's called Motorhome, and it is on Johnny Iguana's Chicago Spectacular.
You are listening to a live broadcast from PianoForte Chicago with pianist Johnny Iguana. I'm Leslie Keros, and this is 90.9 FM WDCB. Well, Johnny, I wanted to thank you for that rousing ending. I mean, I was noticing you were really dwelling in the lower registers of that beautiful piano. And that's one you mentioned that is on your new album, Johnny Iguana's Chicago Spectacular. So can you tell us a little bit more about the album and some of the people you have on it?
It's funny you should mention the lower ranges of the piano, because I find, maybe to a fault, that I write a lot down on that part of the piano because I have a 1913 Chickering grand in my house.
Oh, do you really?
And that's the part of the piano that sounds like it defeats all competition. It sounds so great down there. So I tend to avoid, I tend to write down here, and it's probably not the right way to go, but it's, I'm sure a lot of people write on the instrument that they have.
Well, I was just going to observe too, when I see blues pianists, especially with a big group, sometimes it's a little hard to be heard in the lower registers, so often they'll dwell in the upper register.
No, that's true. Yeah.
So it's really nice to hear you actually exploring that part of the piano.
Yeah, and you're right, it's a different proposition solo versus in a trio or 8-piece or bigger, like that of what gets heard. You're right, you only hear it by smashing around up there. Yeah. But while you asked me about the album, Larry Scholar, who's a friend and a great producer, suggested the album, and we got to talking and decided to really make it a tribute to the Chicago greats of blues piano, going back to Brunzi's day and up through Span and
Big Bill Brunzi. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Otis Span.
Josh Altimer was his piano player, who I think died at 29, and very kind of shadowy figure, not much known about him. But Billy Boy Arnold would be the one to tell you that he was known as the best in the land when he was there.
Really?
Brunzi picked him up, so I really had to work hard to sort of figure out that style. It was so different than, like a pre-war style versus a 60s style. It just evolved so fast, but they're both so great, and there's a real Chicago sound to both of them in their way. So
Otis Spann, of course, was with Muddy Waters and just a phenomenal blues pianist. I think he defines the sound for so many people.
Yeah, he was the gateway for me, as I think a lot of piano players. Just like it's hard to compete with the power and poetry of him. It's like a magic act. I don't know how he did it. Just, you can't find a recording where he doesn't just sound sublime. It's almost
true.
Aggravating. But so we picked songs that had Johnny Jones on them, and Big Moose Walker, and Sunnyland Slim, and a couple with Span and Joshua Altimer. So, and a really great illustrator did in the album. There's a poster that he did portraits of all of them, and there's bios in there. Bill Dahl wrote notes about each of them, and as well as about the album, what songs we did in my originals and me and stuff. So it's a really cool package too, and I'm looking forward to it coming out on vinyl too.
I think it's actually long overdue, and I'm so glad it's come out. You mentioned the Claudettes when you were playing some of the music, and I'd like to come back to them, but I think listeners are probably anxious to hear a little bit more from you at the piano. So what would you like to play for us next?
I'm going to play a song that I did for the Chicago Spectacular album. It's a Gil Scott-Heron song that I asked Philip Michael Scales if he would sing it on the album. He's B.B. King's nephew. He plays kind of indie soul in Chicago, but I knew he would sing this song great, and I also have played it instrumentally for years, and so I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to tell you about the song after that when it comes time.
Sounds good.
Okay. song here that I'm a big fan of these quasi cartoons that Sally Cruikshank did. She was a Sesame Street animator, but before that she did these really incredible cartoons, Quasi at the Quackadero and another, and the music was done by the Cheap Suit Serenaders, who were affiliated with Crumb, with R. Crumb, but it was Bob Armstrong and Al Dodge were the guys who did that music, and kind of had that in mind when I came up with this. And also another Raymond Scott kind of title. I called it Moroccan Blues Bar Rainy Night. It really starts pouring in the middle of the piece, so you might want to get your umbrellas. Oh, that's fun to play. Okay, I'm going to do another one that was Claudette's instrumental that I have as track 2 on the Johnny Iguana's Chicago Spectacular with Michael Kasky and Bill Dickens on this one. But this is the original piano-only version of Hammer and Tickle, which is a good piano title. Song for a piano tune, you must admit. You must admit that to me.
You are listening to a live broadcast with Johnny Iguana from PianoForte Chicago. I'm Leslie Keros, and this is WDCB 90.9 FM. And Johnny, I was curious, for those of us who are not intimately familiar with the piano, you mentioned Hammer and Tickle being a great title. And you want to expand on that just a little bit?
Nah. Well, I think it would be pretty irresponsible for me to claim that I do a whole lot of tickling on the piano. It's more hammering. But
no, I'm not hearing a whole lot of that so far.
Well, you hammer the piano. It's got hammers in it,
right?
And then also, that tune, I get a little fleet of finger in the middle there, so that's the tickle part, relatively speaking. But
right.
I might have told you.
Hammer. Just for people who are not familiar with the inside of the piano, that's what's actually striking the strings and evoking the sound.
And yeah, the Delmark album that I just put out has my bloody hand on the cover because this piano that I played on the recording is a 100-year-old Chicago-made cable piano company, Upright, at Shirk Studios on Ashland. And the hammer assemblies broke 4 times during the sessions, and he had to sort of improvise gluing them. Super glue was just a key to the recording. And that old piano, when I glissando, I did that, and it didn't make a sound, but it did take the skin off my fingers.
Seriously?
And that's what that photo is from. So yeah, the hammers broke and my skin came off, but otherwise it was a very successful session.
But it was a great shot.
Yeah, it was a candid. Yeah.
So your new CD is Johnny Iguana's Chicago Spectacular, and I want to talk more about that in a minute, but I wanted to just observe something. That middle piece you played, the way you ended it, just holding down the right hand while you left off the left. You know what that reminded me of? A Quincy Jones arrangement, when he brings it down just to the horns at the end and kind of builds suspense that way. So I really enjoyed that. I
have a couple of tunes where I've noticed the same thing, and I was hoping this piano would do the same that mine does at home, where if I'm playing thunderously with both hands, but the right hand is just holding what it's doing, and then you let go of the left, it takes a second for the sound from the left hand to dissipate, and then you're left with this glow.
Yes,
exactly.
Exactly.
You're always trying to find, horn players and guitar players have so much fun with the possibilities of their instrument. Piano seems like it's pretty one-dimensional in that regard, and that like you hit them and you hit the hammers, but to kind of get effects out of it, you have to sort of work at it and figure that out. An organ is easier. You have drawbars and speakers.
True.
Piano, yeah, it's cool to kind of come up with kind of effects like that. Yeah.
Well, and especially when you're always playing an instrument you may not have played very much before. I mean, as you go, when you were touring with Junior Wells, I can't imagine, you didn't bring your own instrument, did you?
Well, I had a digital piano, a keyboard, but I did bring a drawbar organ and a real Leslie speaker. Now, the drawbar organ was Hammond's portable one that you can carry with one hand in a case instead of 3 sweating big people carrying it, 4 maybe. But the Leslie is, it's like moving a dresser for every gig.
Yes, it's very large.
Big full-size 122 Leslie. So I did bring that because that sound is hard to replicate, But the piano, it's not even worth it in most situations to have an acoustic and mics because it's just too many things go wrong, especially it was a 9-piece band, feedback, and you can't hear it. So even if the piano isn't quite as good, it's not going to be in the league of this thing. But even any upright piano or anything like that, it's just easy. You plug a chord into it and it's done, and it's satisfactory.
So let's talk about your new album, your first blues album as a leader. Tell us a little bit about the people who are guesting on it.
Larry and I, as we sort of started, the producer, Larry Scholar, and I, we were talking about which songs we thought would be a good journey across the decades of Chicago blues and be a good piano feature, and had different, distinct piano players on the original sessions. We then were tasked with, okay, who now in Chicago is going to sing this? And we had a concept of no bass guitar on the vocal tunes. It was going to be the left hand of the piano. It's just sort of an older sound and not sort of swingy or funky bass. But on the instrumentals, Bill Dickens goes bananas, as he does in the most virtuosic way. That's exciting stuff. But on the vocals, it was just going to be me playing piano, either Michael Caskey or Kenny Smith, depending on the song, playing drums. And then when we had John Primer sing, he sang and played guitar. We had Little Ed, and Little Ed sang and played guitar. Billy Boy Arnold, sometimes I've played on stage with him where he will just sing. He's a wonderful singer in addition to, he's known as a pipeline back to the original days of Chicago harmonica playing, and he's
That's
alive
right.
and he knows all these
Sonny
stories. So it's
Williamson.
incredible to be in a van or on a plane or on a stage with him backstage. But so he just sang on one, two, and played harp. But we just thought about that for each song. You know, and for the Sonny Boy song with Big Maceo, it was slam dunk. That's going to be
that's
Billy
Sonny
Boy.
Boy Williamson and Big Maceo Merriweather.
Yeah, that's going to be Billy Boy for
And
that.
then Bob Margolin is on this album as well?
Yeah, well,
Guitarist?
we you know, I love Bob, and Bob and I have had lots of good times on tour and meeting by chance on tour with different groups, and so we really wanted him on one of the tracks, and we thought that the version of 44 that we did, which was kind of Memphis Slim's in the spirit of Memphis Slim's version of it, that we would like to have him do some really good, gritty, garagey guitar. Yeah, he just does these great stabbing lines on it, and so he sent us some overdubs, and we said, oh, you can get a little more violent with it, you know, and then it was just right. And
well,
so.
Speaking of gritty, though, I mean, he's certainly coming up under muddy waters. He certainly, learned some lessons in how to sound gritty.
Well, it was great to have him and John Primer, two
exactly.
feature members of the Muddy Waters band on the record, and I've been a fan of Little Ed since I moved here in the '90s, and he just sounds so good. And I took him a little out of his element, not playing like he played an Elmore James song that's in his element, slide guitar
definitely.
and kind of like a party kind of a
Sure.
beat. But Burning Fire, this Span and S.P. Leary song is a slow burner, and it's really deep, and we just could hear his voice in our head. And he actually said he was going to sing it like his uncle J.B. Hutto. It was kind of the way he was going to sort of do it, the way his uncle would have sang it. And he gave us two options: just the straight Little Ed version and the J.B. Hutto. And we both were like, I like that Hutto version, as you're calling it there. And he's great on it. That was with Kenny Smith, me, and Ed doing the Span song "Burning Fire." That's on the record, and it's really good.
I just want to remind listeners we're talking with Johnny Iguana, who is out with a brand new release called Johnny Iguana's Chicago Spectacular on Delmark Records. I'm Leslie Keros. You're listening to 90.9 FM WDCB in a live broadcast from PianoForte Chicago. So I'm wondering if you do we have more Claudette's music on the list today, or?
There's the song I'm going to play next. It was on one of the early Claudette's records. Yes, it's again. I tried to balance out the set list here with not just ragers and smashers. So this is another nice. It's a woodsy little tune called Tide Pool. That's really fun to play. So.
And then briefly, Claudette's obviously is another band that you lead.
Yeah, that started out as a duo, just piano and drums, and over time it became a four-piece with bass and there's three of us that sing in the group. But Barrett Ulseth is the singer of that group. She's a fantastic Chicago singer, and we should be out all over the road right now, having had an album come out in April, and then I should be out on the road with the Spectacular. So we're just hoping we can just change that last digit in 2020 to 2021.
Yes, and then you won't be home for many months on end.
Yeah, I hope to just leave this place for a long period of time. Too much time at home. No, that's not true. It's been nice at home too. It's all good.
All right.
Okay, so this is Tide Pool. California, Here I Come. This is a song I knew from Bugs Bunny, but I wanted to sort of make a big Maceo version of how he would play it, keeping the cartoonish quality. I like to think this version, especially when played with drums with Michael Kasky, is California, Here I Come from the point of view of Godzilla. But I'm gonna have to just go it alone again here. California, Here I Come. Sitting here with a slightly injured thumb because I tend to bite my nails when I got any nerves. I remember my mother used to paste some kind of stuff on it to make you not bite your nails. And strangely, I seem to remember it tasted like apple. So I would say, apple. It seems, why not flavor it after something less desirable? This is for dancers only. This is a composition that's not on any recording.
Johnny Iguana, live from PianoForte Chicago, right here on 90.9 FM, WDCB. Well, that third piece alone we could talk for 20 minutes about all the influences in there. One of the things I noticed was just how you alternated between repeating the left hand and repeating the right hand, and how that changed the flavor of the piece. I was hearing some 50s rock and roll, I was hearing some boogie woogie in there, and then the tune before that I definitely heard some Otis Spann influence. Can you talk more about the music that inspires you, about the pianists who inspire you, and why? What is it that they're doing that appeals to you?
Well, I've started calling myself a composer rather than a piano player, because it's just, all you have to do is tune in to see Corey Henry on Sundays broadcasting live, and you're like, I give up. You can't compete sometimes. Just that I'm sure many incredible virtuosos on this thing. I consider myself a little bit of a ham-fisted heavy hitter back, probably recalling my punk days playing in bands and stuff. So, but I call it sort of Ouija board composing, where I'll start off with an idea that's, bluesy, and I grew up playing classical. My mother and I both loved classical, and we both took lessons starting on the same day from the same teacher. And as much as I love a lot of, Coltrane and Lee Morgan, a lot of great jazz, I was busy playing blues and punk and writing, and I feel a little bit like blues is Spanish and jazz is Portuguese, and I don't really speak hardly a word of it. But when I compose, when I write, I think I've got those kinds of lines and scales and things in there. But for me, I love a lot of the artists that are on the border between, I love Otis Spann in particular for blues, and I spent so many hours trying to figure out how to play as steadily as him, most of all. But Bobby Timmons, you and I have talked about this, Leslie, which, Bobby Timmons, Mose Allison, these are people that are, I guess you file them under jazz if you've got to file them. But Mose Allison might be 51-49 on a different day of blues, jazz, whatever and then he also has all these chromatic runs that are like, he was a big Chopin fan, I guarantee it. I heard
you are, I can hear that.
Yeah, well, I heard once that he wrote songs about, his frustrations with the music business and about being accepted as just who he was. And he said that in the South he was considered like a northern elite, and in the North he was considered a southern hick or something, and it's hard to fit into one place, and that makes it difficult. But that's why, I think I have my own sort of musical personality that's expressive. That's if instrumental music can be honest, I think I'm honest with it. Where I'm going to play a song coming up in a minute called "Pick Up the Slack, Freddie." That's named after Freddie Slack. It's got a Freddie Slack kind of, as Billy Flynn would be quick to point out, was the pride of Wisconsin, boogie woogie piano player. But the song takes a turn into sort of classical, close your eyes, watery drifting kind of music. And that's just where, as you're writing something, sometimes my hands just sort of lead me there. And if I find it pleasing, that's the composition, and I'm not particularly worried about, it's caused problems in the past with genre lines and radio stations and formats and stuff. But I don't think it's very good to do something that isn't what it really occurs to you to do. And when it pleases you, then if you do it, you play it with pleasure. I think it's infectious,
Well, the band that we talked about earlier briefly, the Claudettes, that was really an opportunity for you to express that and to explore the genre kind of bending that you like to do.
Yeah, I've had rock bands. I had this band, Oh My God, and Software Giant, and Them Versus Them, these rock bands that had no blues in it, period. But the Claudettes was my first chance to, since I was 15, I was in a blues band, and I was in a punk band. And then over the years, I've always enjoyed being in two different groups and two different scenes. Claudettes was my first time. I'm going to start something rooted in blues, but it's going to be more. It's going to be, I'm not going to resist the classical impulses. And Michael Kasky, who started the group with me too, when we're driving around in the van, classical is a large percentage of what we listen to. We both just have a lot in our collection and like introducing it to each other. And he has a lot of what you would now lazily call world music in his collection, and jazz too. And that's something I really do miss in these COVID times, is the band rotating DJs, because we all introduce each other to a lot, all the time.
And as a composer too, that's really important, not to be just listening to one kind of music.
Definitely.
Because it gets stale after a while.
Yeah, I think even people that just consider themselves real blues heads like that, they might maybe branch to jazz and funk or something like that. But everybody should, there's no one kind of music that isn't good. If you think, I don't like country, I don't like reggae, the good stuff is really good. You got to trust me on this, and you have to seek it out, or have someone might advise you, and then you listen, and you know, some people have made me mixes of certain artists, and I just can't find myself getting into it because maybe someone else should try a different playlist. I mean, if someone has 15 albums, what are they sharing? I mean, you would probably like relish the chance to make a mix to convince somebody about a particular artist, but your playlist might be different than someone else's, you know, and wholly different, but yeah.
Just a reminder to listeners, we're talking with Johnny Iguana, and we are broadcasting this hour live from PianoForte Chicago. You're listening to 90.9 FM WDCB, and you mentioned what you're playing next.
Pick Up the Slack, Freddie.
All right.
Which is, again, a Ouija board composition. Okay, I'm going to play what I told you I was going to play, Leslie, because this is great fun. I owe this one to Willie Hayes, because he's the one that first introduced me to the year-long summer vibes of this song, Grazing in the Grass.
Masakela as heard on the solo piano by Johnny Iguana, Grazing in the Grass.
Yeah.
That's a great version of the tune.
Oh, it's so fun to play. Try and stop me. Do I have time to squeeze in a short one or no?
You do. And I just want to remind listeners that you have a new album out. It's called Johnny Iguana's Chicago Spectacular. It's out on Delmark Records and available now, I believe.
Yes, and its title is not hyperbolic. You should hear this thing. I gotta say, we just couldn't figure out what to call it. It's such almost like a roller coaster carnival ride, you know. And LBO at the label wondered if spectacular was a little bit of a lightweight for it. Like a spectacular is like a variety show or something like that. But I think it's the right title for this record.
Absolutely. Yeah. What have you got for us for the last tune?
Oh, I was gonna play Boogie On Reggae Woman, my favorite Stevie Wonder song, which is just also really great fun to play. Thank you to WDCB and Fazioli Pianos at PianoForte. It's really fun to play. I'm sweating it up real good. Got a Kleenex or something? Okay, cool.
Johnny Iguana in a special interview and performance from PianoForte Chicago. His new CD is just out on Delmark Records. It's called Johnny Iguana's Chicago Spectacular. This broadcast was presented in partnership with PianoForte Chicago, dedicated to helping people love the piano. More info available at pianofortechicago.com. We'd also like to thank our friends at CAN TV for presenting this event live on cable television in Chicago on CAN TV Channel 27. We invite you to join us tomorrow morning for another performance here at PianoForte as we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the birth of Charlie Parker, with a live set from the Greg Ward Quartet beginning at 9 a.m. Like today's event, you can't attend in person. It'll be a broadcast-only event live on WDCB. Our thanks to Thomas Zoles and Jeremy Whetstone of PianoForte for their help with this broadcast. Thanks also to Ken Scott, Clarice Kavouris, Dan Bindert, and Paula Bella for production assistance. And thanks, of course, again to Johnny Iguana for performing for us this afternoon. I'm Leslie Keros. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for an afternoon of DCB Jazz with Paula Bella and Bruce Oscar, coming up next here on WDCB.